Welcome to the Let's Talk Property with MFS podcast. MFS are a bridging loan and buy-to-let mortgage provider and not a financial advisors. The opinions expressed in this episode are personal to the host and guest and may not reflect the views of MFS. Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Property with MFS. This is the podcast where we talk all things property. And this week, very excited to have Elle, who's from award-winning estate agents, EO Estate Agents. So Elle, I appreciate you coming today. I know there's problems with various different train lines, so I appreciate you travelling all the way in to see us today. So yeah, thank you. But yeah, so just want to sort of touch base. You've been in the market for a bit now, so just want to know sort of a bit about your journey, how you got into property, and then how you moved into starting a thriving estate agency.
No, definitely. So I started an agency around 8 years ago on High Street, actually for a agency with the dreaded F word, which is Foxtons.
Yeah.
So I was there for a few years, moved across to another agency, an independent agency down in South London. They're heading up their new homes team, and then went into a larger corporate for a little bit of time. I started my company, EO Estate Agents, back just over 3 years ago, right at the start of COVID. Which
Perfect
was
timing.
A little bit ropey to say the least. But yeah, we're here now. We've got a team of 8.
Wow.
We've expanded. We're completely independent. We're not kind of franchised as a team. And we specialise in sales, lettings and new build. But yeah, keeping manically busy, as every self-employed agent will say at the moment.
Amazing. So your offices are in Battersea, you
That's
said?
correct. Yes, yeah. We're in Battersea. We cover the whole of London. We've recently actually expanded our new homes team to Essex and Kent as well.
Amazing.
So we cover quite a large basis. So
Fantastic.
Continuously driving everywhere at the moment.
So I bet Battersea and all the developments there have been keeping you very busy over the last little bit. You're seeing a huge demand for people in that area at the moment?
Definitely. So Battersea is, as you've probably heard of your larger schemes like Battersea Power Station, Nine Elms, the Mac Tower, etc. Yes, they do keep you busy. But we kind of deal with the whole market. I'd say the rental sector at the moment is probably our busiest, the kind of sector of our business currently. Despite those developments, we're seeing a lot of private rental sector. A lot of our clients are buying box and renting out private rental at the moment.
Amazing. So we've heard a lot over the last couple of months about the race for space, and that many landlords are looking to leave the market and things like that. What are you seeing? Are you seeing people leaving the market, or just as many people coming in? Or
it's difficult. It depends on the demographic. So landlord-wise, certainly we're seeing a massive influx of flats that were previously rented coming to the sales market. That's primarily based on the kind of lenders putting mortgage rates up. We've all seen the papers, and I'm sure you guys have seen that as well. That
I try not to read them too much, because it's always doom and gloom.
Yeah, it's not necessarily doom and gloom as such in the sales market. The issue is that a lot of landlords are selling because they're not getting the profit that they were previously getting because their rates have gone up. So that side of things, we've seen an influx of sales property come to the market. The supply and demand is slightly out of whack, I'd say, for flats. Houses, still a great market. For flats, it just depends on the area. If you're in an area where it's a really high level of flats coming to the market, naturally it's going to be a slower market for selling.
So are you seeing, I've got a few friends that run estate agency business, are you seeing like an unbelievable amount of people inquiring about one apartment at the moment, more so than you'd see previously, like 15 people as opposed to 5?
For sales or for rentals?
For rentals.
For rentals, yes. For example, we had a rental recently that we put on for 30 minutes. We genuinely had 36 inquiries in 30 minutes. We had to take it off Rightmove. We're seeing, and it's been the most insane rental market that I've ever seen. I started off in rentals years ago, and that was, I'd say, a better market than the last 5 years for rentals. Now the supply is genuinely completely out of whack. We're getting, tenants that will offer 20% above asking price as a standard. That's not really in South London yet.
Wow.
Yeah, before viewing, yeah.
It's absolutely bizarre, isn't it? And I think it sort of highlights the sheer need for new homes in this country, new homes for the rental market, everything else. I mean, London's more of a central sort of hub for foreign investors at the moment. Do you deal with a lot of the people that are purchasing your stock that you have? Are they foreign investors, or are they?
Both.
Is it a mixed bag?
Yeah, so at the moment, I'd say it's primarily for investment, it's cash investors. So because it makes more financial sense for them, or someone with a really high deposit, rather than we used to call them accidental landlords. So for the last few years, it's primarily been for rental sector owners that have owned the property, can't necessarily sell it or want to keep it, rent it out, and then moving and buying something else.
Yeah.
we just don't see that anymore because there's just not any kind of money in it. It's
They
more
don't see
hassle
the
than it's
financial
worth.
benefit.
No, if anything, they're breaking even or not making enough money at all. And it's the other side of it, so it doesn't make financial sense and to keep the investment. We're seeing cash side of things. Definitely, we deal with a lot of overseas purchases, especially in that kind of Battersea, Chelsea market. Yeah, I think we still get your kind of standard home buyer in the UK. You'll naturally see that.
You always see that, won't you?
But that's more for homes rather than flats. That being said, first-time buyers, it makes more sense for them to buy than to rent at the moment, because when I was looking to buy 5 years ago, it was that my rental would cost me, say, £700 more than my mortgage would. So it made way much more sense to buy, whereas now it's even more escalated, even though the rates have gone up.
Yeah, and there are some people bringing out back the 100% mortgages,
exactly,
which we're seeing again. People that have been renting for an extended period of time and everything else. So, I mean, your clients, your foreign national clients that come into London, they're looking for apartments in these nice new developments with the good amenities and everything else like that. Is that sort of what they're going for? Are they looking for stuff which they could, some of them purchasing, maybe refurbing, or is it?
Yeah, it's a mix. So I'd say our overseas buyers primarily looking for finished units, which they can rent for a high valued yield. Battersea Power Station is a really good example of that. Even despite being the highest pound per square foot in our area by distance, they still rent at an astronomical price. Still the rental yield's still high enough and the capital's high enough year
Out of interest, what is the average rent for a 2-bed apartment in Battersea at the moment?
The average
off the top of your head
across the whole of Battersea, the average rent I'd say would be about 2.5, 2.7 for a small 2-bed.
Wow.
For maybe 650, 700 square foot.
Wow.
So that's standard. Really high end, like 2-bed, 700 square foot, really good finish.
Some amazing amenities.
Minimum 3,250.
Interesting.
Like so it is an insane amount of rent if you think about it.
Yeah, and I think more and more people are getting stuck in the trend where they can't get out of rent. People that are just stuck renting at the moment because, cost of living, cost of actually running the place at the moment. Any residual income's getting eaten by that.
It's scary, I think it's a scary time to be renting. I was saying to a colleague of mine today, actually this morning, I said I wouldn't want to. We have to prepare ourselves as a company, because we're only 8 of us and we're bespoke, to launch anything for rentals, because our phones just go absolutely off the hook. And it is a scary time to rent, because I don't know how anyone is obtaining any savings unless they're earning a substantial amount in London, but the actual earnings haven't gone up in line with inflation, which is the issue. And
that's a big issue that we're sort of seeing as well. And London's not the cheapest place in the world to live anyway, so even just getting around could be a bit of a nightmare. So you seeing sort of, we've been talking quite a lot in conversation I've been having about first-time buyers.
Yeah.
I mean, do you deal with a lot of first-time buyers?
A lot. Yeah. That primarily, maybe 3 years ago, was our main target market, was first-time buyers. At the moment, it's a bit more. The demographic is a bit more balanced.
Okay.
Because first-time buyers are saying, right, okay, do I buy now? Do I wait till the rates come down? Obviously, you'll probably know more than me, Mark, on rates, but I don't think necessarily they're going to come down dramatically.
No.
So a lot of first-time buyers are saying, look, you're better off buying than renting.
Yeah.
I'd say 60% of our demographic is definitely first-time buyers. The other part of it is, I would say, primarily investors. There's still investors buying.
Yeah.
It's just not UK-based investors, I'd say.
It's nice to hear that we've got the first-time buyers coming into the market, because it is always a big thing, and it is always something that any government that's trying to get in or stay in, it's always a hot topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the Help to Buy scheme. Did you see a lot of stuff when they removed Help to Buy? Did you suddenly see inquiries or people purchasing just drop overnight?
Completely. It's from a development perspective, all of our developments are on Help to Buy, primarily for flats.
Most new builds are, aren't they?
All of them, and we unfortunately had a few clients that missed the deadline for completion. So the completion deadline was critical. So those developments now have reduced by, I would say, average of 15% on their asking prices.
Wow.
The difficulty is, without a scheme coming in again like that propped up the market since 2017, just after Brexit. So the scheme wasn't as I'd say popular as when I worked in an independent in South West. That was everything we sold was on Help to Buy, one after the other. £600,000 flats, 2 beds, even at 600 square foot, which wasn't £1,000 per square foot then in Battersea, all sold. And now those buyers are struggling to sell now 5 years later. It's a great scheme. I think the government really needs to bring something back. reflective.
I've
of
heard
that.
some rumours I've been seeing in the papers, and I think it's something they will need to do. And I'll be looking at a lot of the major home builders at the moment. They're bringing their own sort of incentive schemes, where they give you a discount on deposit, or they're giving you cash back after a certain amount of time. But it still doesn't quite.
It's difficult as well for, I think, for those developers. Speaking to one of our recommended solicitors last week, you know, the actual rules and regulations have changed, so developers can't actually offer to pay for things like legal incentives, for example. So obviously you can hide that as a cash incentive or you know, a discount off the price, but the issue is at the moment people just don't have the cash, you know, don't have the savings. They're looking at lenders offering them ideally 5 or 5.5 times to add up. So if they're not getting a cash incentive, there's less buyers naturally. And actually that Help to Buy scheme, it's a 40% equity loan. It's at 40%, it's a massive amount.
It's sizable, isn't it? Especially if you're starting to get on the property ladder. And I think teamed with that and the removal of stamp duty as well, I think that drove a lot of people during lockdown and that sort of stage up.
Definitely.
You know, I was actually surprised. I mean, my brother, he bought his with Help to Buy and that as well. So otherwise he probably wouldn't have been able to.
The stamp duty was a huge incentive. I think, you know, that market was crazy. It was the only thing, I think, if after COVID we didn't have that, it would have been detrimental to the UK sales market.
So as well.
Everyone I knew purchased through that. Even second time buyers, you know, that saving was about £20,000 saving on a £500,000 flat. So
it's a huge saving for people, especially you know, with things on. I think, you know, there are a lot of changes coming. There's a lot of different trends within the market at the moment. What are your views on sort of the rental reform bills that they're looking to bring in, and you know, what sort of key factors you think are going to affect landlords are going to be looking at in it?
There's two sides to it. I think the benefit is it's easier to get rid of antisocial tenants for landlords. I think the issue in the last kind of 5 or 6 years is that a lot of kind of having a tenant goes against the landlord, which, if you think about it, is crazy. You know,
it's mental.
The owner of the property has less rights than the person living there, even if they don't pay rent.
And they take all the financial risk. Correct, they take every, you know, if anything goes wrong, it's on them, not the.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the benefits. But you know, it will still be harder to evict a tenant, which is a problem. I think things like the pet changes has been quite a big one for our landlords. So that you won't be able to say no to a pet. Obviously, there is ways.
Unless you're trying to bring a tiger in or something, you can say no. But if it's a cat or a dog,
if it's a cat or a dog, and the issue is that you're probably going to have, you know, unfortunately, pets do kind of maybe. And not
everyone trains their pets. Not everyone looks after them, and then. You know, I can imagine. Well, from when we first had our dog, you know, if you left it on its own for a day, you come back to all sorts of.
Yeah, I've got a baby, a puppy beagle, so I'm very much. He's very naughty.
Oh, you know.
I wouldn't want my tenants having him in their flat. So it's difficult. I think certain reforms are great from a landlord perspective, but I just think it will affect a tenant more. It gives them more right, which is good in a way. You know, tenants want to be able, it's their home too, they're renting it.
Yeah, of course.
But I think there's probably more important factors for tenants and landlords, such as like the rise in rentals. We've seen like a 21% increase within 12 months in rent, which is just unobtainable. A lot of people, I think, we're going to see, unfortunately, without homes, because their rent's going up by, say, £400 on their new contract.
Isn't it?
Then they've got to find somewhere else, but they're better off staying where they are because everywhere else has gone up even more than that.
I think it's just a massive catch-22 for people, isn't it? And I think, I was speaking to someone the other day where we had a tenant, paid the first 2 months rent, not paid a bean since, pretty much taken me 1.5 years to get control of that apartment because they've worked the system, they know their rights and everything else. And for me, that sort of stuff's cut and dry. If you don't pay your bills, you don't deserve to live there. But
no, it's difficult.
And again, that landlord's having to cover a mortgage for that extended period of time. So something that's supposed to be an investment for him has now become a chore. And
I think this is the most important thing of having things like landlord insurance, where insurance, where we have companies that offer that for our landlords, where it's 12 weeks covered plus your 5-week deposit. There's things like 5 years ago you'd have a minimum 6 to 7 week upfront deposit. That 1 week makes a big difference if you're looking at kind of £5,000 a month house, for example.
100%.
Yeah, it is catch-22 because landlords' interest rates have gone up on their mortgage. They need to cover their mortgage, so then the rent goes up. Then the tenant might not be able to pay rent. So it is really difficult.
It's just like a perfect storm of bits and pieces and everything else. And then also there's talk of these green incentives as well, EPC ratings and and all of that fun stuff.
EPC rating's an interesting one because obviously, especially in London or say South London where we are, it's all Victorian terraces or Victorian ground floor garden flats. So the ideal for every tenant, all of them pretty much have a D or E energy rating. So the landlord's going to have to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds across London to make sure it's up at the right cost. And that's going to come in 2024, 25.
Yeah, well, I was listening to someone talk the other day and they were sort of saying this again, it's all this stuff comes out, but nothing's been rubber stamped or done. So I think a lot of it could change because, I mean, it's not even the financial cost of it, it's the actual labour and skilled tradespeople to be able to implement all of these things.
It's the same. It was the same issue with the Help to Buy deadline on completions for developers. You know, the utilities, and I'm sure there's something you might have heard. We heard that the utilities now have been so far delayed. We had a client that's had 6 months delays on installing water and electric to the site. If it wasn't installed, you couldn't sign up for Help to Buy. That's affecting the overall new homes market because we're having a massive backlog in developers saying, actually, I can't afford to build on this land that I've purchased 2 years ago because the construction cost of steel, wood, etc. has gone up so much. It's no longer financially viable because they had a 20% profit margin, which has now gone down to 5%. They can't sell the site because they've already applied for planning. They've already spent £500,000 on the site that they purchased. So it's a real, it's not all doom and gloom. There's still a lot of things selling and renting. But from a development perspective, I think it's going to be an interesting one because I think the supply will then go crazy again.
That's the thing, it either goes one way or the other. There's no sort of in between.
It was also, we have buyers say, well, actually, my rate's at a higher level, so I'm not going to pay, I need to discount it by X amount.
I'll get less loan to value now.
Exactly. So it's a difficult option, I think, for especially developers. A lot of it can't be helped. A lot of it's third parties. I think a lot of people demonise developers a little bit, but
they do get a hard rap. But at the end of the day, they're the guys that are willing to build the properties. Don't get me wrong, most of them make money from it, but again, it's sort of they wear all the risk, and they're the ones that if something was to happen, or rule changes, or regulation changes, or whatever it may be, utilities, they're left holding the baby effectively.
Exactly.
So, I mean, in terms of landlords, I'll take it you probably end up dealing with quite a few portfolio landlords. I mean, what sort of tips are you giving to, or what you're advising clients that are looking to expand their portfolios? Maybe have 1 or 2 properties, but want to expand their portfolio in this current climate. What sort of stuff do you tell them to? To
not overpay, I think is the main important, which would be my advice anyway.
It's a surprising amount of people that still do overpay.
It's more overpriced stock. At the moment it's taking an average of 12 weeks for properties to go under offer. That's on standard high street purchase.
Is that nationally, or is that London specific?
That's London. The issue in general for kind of investors looking is that a lot of agents overvalue to win the instruction, and we're seeing that fees on the back of that are much lower, so we're competing with really low fees, which isn't sustainable for estate agents either. So what that equates to is lots of stock on the market, 10%
overinflated prices.
Landlord then pays that. They then can't sell it in 5 years. It depends on whether they're purchasing as a buy to let primarily to hold it for 20 years. If they're doing that, you're pretty much going to be fine in London anyway. If they're buying it to maybe flip it and have capital, it's about getting the right deal. So most of our portfolio landlords are larger ones for bulk purchases. So rather than your kind of 2 to 3, it's more, I'll buy this whole block on a discounted rate, which is not too bad of a time to do that because a lot of developers are trying to exit their schemes as quickly as possible. So
funny you're saying that. We're seeing more we do a lot of developer exits in our bridging space, and we're seeing more and more of it now. Again, 10 units, they've sold 4 maybe, they've got deposits on 2, they've still got those 4 which they're marketing, they're trying to get rid of, but obviously their existing finance arrangements are coming out, so obviously we'll come in and finance it and give them time to sell. So you're obviously seeing a lot of it as well.
A lot of refinancing, a lot of rejigging in regards to figures. It's difficult because even with portfolio landlords, it's not necessarily a bad time to buy either, despite the rates being higher. The rates shouldn't have ever been at kind of 2% for a buy to let anyway, or 1.2.
I think people were sort of spoilt for too long, and it's sort of, we see that initial knee jerk when rates started going up. Everyone's like, right, I'm going to sit on my hands, wait to see what happens, and then realising, a bit like COVID, not much is changing. You need to sort of get on with it, I'd say.
Definitely. I think it's also about kind of timing for rentals. So making sure that, look, if you're buying now for rent, you're going to let it straight away. It's about not having a void period. And actually, it is swings and roundabouts naturally, because last year before, if you're buying a buy-to-let, it'll take you slightly longer to rent it, but your rate's lower. But if it takes you 2 months to rent it, at £2,000 a month, say, you've lost £4,000 for the whole year, which,
Yeah.
to be honest, the rates, it kind of levels out,
Yeah.
you know. So it's the best advice is to not overpay, and to make sure to go with the right agent when you're letting is really important, to make
One
sure
that gives you
get
real
that rent.
figures, not just
Real
the figures you want to hear
yeah,
to get the deal.
Yeah, real figures and real qualification of tenant, and make sure that the referencing are down to a T. We've had some, you do get some horror stories of things that happen. We had a rental that, you know, even a font from bank statements was incorrect, and it's scanned, and we could tell from the font that it was slightly different to the standard font of the bank that was being used for the statements.
Wow.
So that's how clever people are now on kind of frauding their situation. So you have to use it extremely careful.
Scary, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And it's again, it's the unfortunate thing. It's a small minority of people that ruin it for everyone else.
Yeah.
So, you know, all these new rent reform bills, I think they're a good thing in certain spaces because it will shift out the rogue landlords, which, you know, suddenly decide they see next door's getting more rent than them, so they make up some silly excuse to get the person out where they can then up the rent or whatever it may be. And then again, you've got a lot more, I've seen a lot more property deal sources and sort of agents or people of that type coming in, and they will, like you said, they'll give someone a real high value number, which isn't achievable. And I suppose that sort of messes the market up a bit, because what it's on at and what it's being sold to are two different things. And
it's very difficult. We're finding it a lot with potentially clients that find the property and onward. Say they found my dream home, so started looking before they're on the market. They then said to us, you know, I need to sell at this price, but the market's here. You know, it doesn't because they've already offered on the other one. So that's the real difficulty at the moment, is overpricing, and it's no benefit to anyone really, unless you're targeted in a corporate office as a manager to get as many listings as possible, which benefits that individual, but it doesn't benefit the client, it doesn't benefit the company, because you're spending all the money on marketing and not selling it.
So I suppose you probably had to have quite a few of those awkward conversations with someone saying, right, I've just offered on this house, right, I need you to sell it for this, so I can complete on that. And you have to sort of realistically bring them back down to earth and say, look, you know, I can list it at that, but
it's
not going to say it won't sell at that.
Because of the way we work, we deal with each client directly. So you have one individual that's an expert in the field in the company that works with you, and it's about honesty and transparency. Because, you know, if I listed your house, Mark, you wouldn't be happy if I said, right, listed at $1 million, and then in 3 weeks I go, actually, you need to drop it to 900. Because that's what happens all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And then you lose credibility as the agent. It annoys everyone. It's no benefit to us because we spend money up front before we even list.
Yeah, you've got your marketing and you know, everything else. I mean, I see it quite a lot. I've got a few programs that I use to source properties for myself, and then I get notifications when properties prices are dropping, and then you just constantly see it. And it's not even by a little bit either. It's like
significant.
So, some 50 grand plus, and it's sort of like.
It's difficult. I was viewing houses the other day, and it was, you know, they bought £80,000 less than 2 years ago, and buyers are savvy now. As an agent, I'll instantly look up what it's been bought for, and when it was purchased, so I can make sure that I'm not buying. But as a buyer, all this information is available to you now on Google and Rightmove Plus. You can look up everything. So actually, as an owner, you can't trick people, and actually the banks won't value it correctly. So you'll get all the way down the line, and it'll be down valued anyway. Yeah,
that's another thing. We see a lot of that as well. A lot of down valuations, or people saying, right, I've offered on this property, and then we're going to value it, and it's not
the right level.
Because obviously valuers will take into comparables in the area, obviously the state of the building itself and everything else with it. And I think people can be catfish sometimes, can't they, when they look at a property and thinking, you know, it's worth X amount, but then you send someone in to value it,
it's difficult. It's long gone the days where it goes, it's what someone's willing to pay for
it. Pay for it.
We do have that. We have a lot of success in ex-local forest properties where they're great investments. The rental yield at the moment is about 8%. 2 beds at 220. You know, in an estate, maybe in South West London, for example, and they go crazy. Like we get so many people offering on them, but it's concrete construction. You need minimum 25% with a select lender, and a lot of buyers don't know that. And it's also explained to a client of, look, you know, this person may have offered this, but actually we have to legally put it forward. But have they been qualified? You know, does their broker actually know that they need to go with a select lender, which they'll tell you they do, but it's not necessarily the truth, unfortunately.
We see a huge amount of that at the minute, and I think it is, something that we're going to see quite a bit of. But it's good to see that there are people like yourself that can bring people down to reality, and I think we need more people like you within this market. Because a lot of people, like I say, they can talk stuff up to, guaranteed rental yields and rental incomes. And, I see big signs everywhere. Come to us, we'll give you guaranteed rent. And
guaranteed rent, I would personally, I think I'd stay away from. But that's, if I was looking to purchase, because also your first year is guaranteed at 5%. That's great. But what about the year after when the guarantee goes away?
And no one holds a property for a year normally, do they?
No.
You need to be looking at 5-10 years. And that's why, it's always key to get, I always say, make sure you have a good broker, good estate agent, property source, or wherever it is you get your properties from, and then also have a good team of a good legal team and people that can work and do the stuff for you. And I think there's a lot of research, more research. You need to do more research today than you do now, because there's so many tricks and so many ways that people are trying to just offload stuff.
It's definitely from a solicitor and broker point, 100%. Like we will say to you, it's your biggest purchase or most of all your biggest investment. Yeah. So don't go with the cheapest. Don't go with someone that's kind of cookie cutter solicitor. That's a team that not necessarily even in the UK. Sometimes at the moment we see a lot of that. We have a list of kind of solicitors, more a longer blacklist of people we wouldn't work with than we will work with, because it's the one reason why properties fall through. 33% fall through on an average in the UK.
Is that many? Wow. I mean, we always recommend that people, when they do with us, because obviously we do bridging and buy-to-let, it's not your normal conveyancing, it's not the same as just doing a normal resi mortgage. And then we generally tend to find, client's given us, he's doing a bridge with us, he's given us a lawyer, he's been his lawyer for 15 years, he's done a few conveyances and a few little bits and pieces for him. And then when we come to trying to do our side of things, we find our lawyers are doing a lot of hand holding, and like you said, so those lawyers get paid either way. If the deal falls through, your offer gets locked, whatever, they've still been paid at the end of the day. So, I think, the people in your team always get lawyers, and really lawyers and brokers, and like good ones to.
It's difficult. We've had situations where it's, I'm going to use my uncle's best friends, that sort of thing, and they're completely different. They're not even in that side of the law, and that's honestly, it's a really interesting. You get that, and you just think you're purchasing it. That example was at 1.3 million. They're purchasing at, and you think, I wouldn't. I'm not sure I'd be risking it. No. I think there was a horror story recently in the kind of development that they use the same lawyer the whole way through for every one. It's 10% of the house got to be knocked down because the planning condition wasn't correct and they were built incorrectly. So it's just extremely.
I think I know the one you're talking about as well. But it's just absolutely fascinating. What sort of property investors interesting compared to what they were sort of 5 years ago, maybe?
So I would say more so properties to do work to. Yeah. Or which has always been the case. To be honest, we've always found that you'd have developers smaller developers, investors that would look to do that and then flip. I wouldn't say they flip as much. So, for example, buying and then doing it up, then selling it, because there's not as much. The construction cost is too high. So that's what used to be. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, a lot of our developers would buy house, drop it in 6 flats, sell the flats. Yeah. I'd say more investors as such are looking for really good rental properties, maybe from a stressed residential buyer. So we're seeing residential seller. We're seeing that a lot. So owners that are going, wow, my mortgage has gone from £2,000 a month to £3,000 a month. I need to sell it. So that's I would say is primarily what our landlords or buy-to-let investors are looking for. Interesting.
Well, I just want to say a massive thank you for coming to see us today. And please, can you let us know where people can find you, and where can we look out for some of the amazing properties you got for sale at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. So you can go to our website, which is eoestateagents.co.uk, or we've also got Instagram as well. So it's EO Estate Agents, or at EO Estate Agents on _ EO Estate Agents on Instagram.
Amazing. Well, look, thanks again for coming to us, Mark. And look forward to catching up with you again soon. Just like to say thank you for tuning in to Let's Talk Property with MFS today. Please don't forget to comment and subscribe, and don't miss out on any of our future episodes. If you want to learn more about Market Financial Solutions and what we do, please do visit www.mfsuk.com.